Dr. Kavita Singh has been a scholar of art history and museum studies at JNU for nearly 2 decades and a professor at the School of Arts and Aesthetics since 2009. She's been a curator of major exhibitions at the National Museum and the author of many books. This year, she's the winner of one of the highly prestigious Infosys Prizes, given to her for her extraordinary illuminating study of Mughal, Rajput and Deccan art, as well as her insightful writing on the historical function and role of museums. So how come she's been the target of hostility and interference from the new administration at JNU? So much so that she was denied leave to go down to Bangalore and receive her Infosys Prize. We're going to talk to Dr. Singh about her research and about the situation at her university. Welcome to The Wire and congratulations on your prize.
Many thanks. Thanks for having me and thanks for your kind words.
So let me start by asking you to walk us through your approach to Indian art history, starting with the Mughal school.
So art history is a really fascinating discipline because not only do you get to spend your life looking at some extraordinarily beautiful things, but you also can pick and choose from a vast array of approaches to whatever it is that you're going to study. So you can approach your work as an archivist, you can approach your work as an historian, you can approach your work as an anthropologist, you can approach your work as a literary studies person. It's like there's even as a chemist, so there is this huge and fascinating array of approaches that one can take to the work. Now, I work on Mughal painting, I work also on Rajput painting, and I also work in museum studies, as you said. And in all of these, I think I get motivated to zoom in on something and research on it and write on it when I see the possibility of making an intervention through my work, particularly when I see that it is possible for me to take up one of the truisms, one of the established tropes that surround some aspect of our art, and I can actually subvert it or invert it in some way.
So what's the truism that applies to Mughal art in our common perception?
Well, for instance, one of the truisms about Mughal art is that it is in some way foreign, alien, it's an imposition, it's purely imperial, it doesn't come out of the soil, it's not connected to the people, and that Rajput painting is its binary opposite, and that it is actually connected to the soil and to the mythos of this place. And what I tried to do in one of my essays, for instance, was to talk about how the schools of Rajput painting that we know and celebrate are actually seeded by a moment of migration when an artist leaves the Mughal court in order to enter a Rajput court to find new patronage over there. And he carries with him the entire toolbox that he used in the Mughal atelier and puts it in service of his new patrons. This comes about, of course, because the Mughal and the Rajput spheres are so intertwined that it's really not possible to prize them apart. We know about the relationships of marriage that were there between the Mughal and various Rajput families, but also the administrative and military relationship there was, where so many of the generals in the Mughal armies were Rajput rulers who spent their entire lives fighting in Mughal campaigns. In one paper, I particularly try to show how artists who migrate from Mughal courts carry with them composition, schema, ways of aggrandizing their Mughal patron, and when they bring them to the Rajput courts that they are now serving, they use exactly the same formulae, sometimes to honor the Rajput king, and sometimes to honor the Rajput king's deity. So in exactly the kind of position that you might expect to see Jahangir, in a Rajput painting, you will see Krishna placed on the same kind of throne.
Of course. So tell us what happens when we move further away from the Mughal Imperium or from Delhi and towards the Deccan. You've been working increasingly and supporting other scholars that work on the Deccani arts. And your most recent book has the lovely title of Scent Upon a Southern Breeze, the Synesthetic Arts of the Deccan. So what is the quality and what's the social culture of Deccani arts that make them synesthetic?
I think all arts are synesthetic. And I seized upon that title because I was so pleased with some of the contributions that came for this book that I edited for Mark Publications, because two of the essays that these wonderful scholars, Emma Flatt and Ali Akbar Hussain, wrote were actually on the historical role of smells and perfumes.
Let me stop you and ask you to please just explain for some of our viewers what synesthesia is.
Synesthesia is a literary figure of speech in which one uses terms that belong to one sense in order to explain what might be experienced through another sense. So, to get a taste for somebody's work, for instance, you're not actually putting it on your tongue, but you get a sense of what it means when we use the word in that way. Now, all of the arts, one might say, are synesthetic, because after all, when one looks at a painting, a representation of a rose, one is reminded of all the sensations that come to us when we observe an actual rose rather than a painted one. So the visual sign of the rose on the piece of paper takes us to a remembered experience of a physical rose in the world. But particularly in reading the works of these scholars who have contributed to this book, one was made aware of how strong and powerful the place of other senses was in our aesthetic experience of the world, where just as we understand that there is a sophisticated understanding of what is produced in the visual realm, or a sophisticated understanding of what is produced in the auditory realm, where you expect that there is theorizing about music, where people know this kind of rag produces this kind of emotion, there is also a kind of theorizing about what different kinds of foods do to you, what different kinds of smells do to you. So one sees how when one is unwell or one is lovesick, you would have a doctor actually prescribing to you what color to wear, what music to hear, and what perfumes to surround yourself with, so that whatever lack you are feeling internally in your psyche gets rebalanced. So let's say in these essays which these scholars write, and they're able to write these essays because in this fabulous kingdom of Bijapur in the 17th century, you actually have perfumery texts that lay out recipes for what smells should be produced by what olfactants or what materials, what fragrant materials, for what purpose and when they should be used. Because they have this fantastic text at their disposal, they're able to work on a history of the sense of smell and its significance.
That's a fascinating thing to hear from an art history scholar, and certainly for as a layperson, it raises many questions, because we do restrict our idea of art too much to what's visual or what's tactile, and there are so many other senses. So, of course, I understand now why you were selected for the Infosys Prize this year. Tell me what your reaction was to hearing about it, and tell us a little bit about what followed, including the surprise that you were denied leave to go and accept it.
I must say I was completely gobsmacked. I couldn't believe it when I heard about the prize. And partly that's because I belong to a discipline that has such a small footprint in our country. You know, if you want to do a PhD in art history, I think there are 3 universities you can choose from. Though this is a fascinating discipline, it hasn't grown to mainstream status like it is in Europe or even in certain Latin American universities. I know it has a very strong presence. In India, it is so marginal. I could not imagine that anyone had taken note of us, leave alone me. So I was completely gobsmacked and amazed, but I was also incredibly grateful on my own behalf and on behalf of our discipline, which I hope gets a little more of the limelight now, which it so deserves. So that was absolutely wonderful. Traveling to Bangalore was something that I anticipated might be a problem. Because as you know, things on campus in JNU are quite fraught. And one of the issues we have had recently is that the administration has been trying to exert its control over us through all the different forms of paperwork that they have to sign in order to enable us to do any of the things that we do. And there is a new attendance regime which the administration is seeking to impose on us. And I assume they're not being particularly successful in imposing it, because of which they are trying harder and harder to make it painful for us to not obey it. And so one of the things that has happened in the last month and a half is that practically any sanction we have to take, anything we have to apply for, is being turned down because we have not necessarily acceded to what the administration has asked of us.
Because you've resisted some new administration policies, for example, a new policy about faculty attendance.
Correct.
You're receiving mainly just interference, including for going on academic trips or a trip like this one.
Well, unfortunately, I've been the dean for the last year and a half, and being the dean means that one engages with the administration a great deal.
Yeah.
One also has the role of conveying to the administration the views of the faculty on certain proposals that are made.
Yeah.
And so this has made me rather unpopular with the administration.
Right.
So even before the attendance regime, I have been offered a very prestigious fellowship next year in the US at the Getty Research Institute. And I've already been denied leave to go on leave without pay for a few months for this fellowship. I've been offered a visiting professorship for just a few weeks during the summer holidays in Bogota in Colombia. I have also been denied leave to go for that, even though it costs the university nothing and it is at a time when we are not in session. When the attendance regime was sought to be imposed on us and the university issued a circular saying that all our papers would be processed subject to our having marked our attendance in a register, I was denied leave to go to the India International Center to attend a conference.
Which is just across town.
Which is just across town. And so I thought, because I did want to go to Bangalore for the prize ceremony, my family was going and I didn't want them to go and me not to go. So I thought I'd apply for casual leave, of which we get only 8 in a year, and I thought I'd use one of those for this, because that is not a kind of leave that can be denied. And lo and behold, when I got off the aircraft and checked my email, I was told even that had been denied. Subsequently, I think the administration has been embarrassed, and one of the rectors put out a statement saying that they had asked for a clarification about my application, but actually they hadn't. It had been rejected. So it's a funny state of affairs.
It's a funny state of affairs.
It's a funny state of affairs. Because all of these things, I'm not the only one to suffer. There are so many of my colleagues who have had to cancel conferences, whose projects are held up. And eventually, all of these things hurt the university in the immediate term, in the medium term, and in the long term, because our ratings very much depend on our research output and our participation in conferences. And if a person doesn't get to go to conferences, if they don't get to accept fellowships, they are not part of the academic world in the same way. They are not able to produce research. They are not able to publish. And that immediately has an impact on the standing of the university.
So the picture we get from the outside is that the new VC of JNU and the administration is sort of pushing these policies to try and suppress some level of independence that JNU is famous for among the students as well as faculty. What to you is the bigger picture of what's going on in JNU and why there's so much conflict and deadlock?
On one level, one is seeing an attack on universities, particularly public universities all over the world and all over India. And on the other hand, I think what we are seeing in Delhi and JNU is part of a larger phenomenon across the world, but is also very particular to itself. And it is because a number of entities have produced through their discourse an image of JNU as a particular kind of demon or a rakshas of some sort. And having produced this, they are honor bound to now show that they have slain the Rakshas. And so they have no option but to keep flailing at it, regardless of what it is. So it might actually be a university where a great deal of very serious and high quality research work is going on, which can only happen if there are people who are seriously engaged with the academic work. And yet, because the discourse has produced something else out of it, we are being consistently spoken of as a place that is not engaged in academics, but is engaged in a form of politics that needs to be countered and fought and attacked.
Whereas your own work proves the opposite. So a battle to slay an imaginary Rakshas, that's a very beautiful image to take away from an art historian and useful in many situations in the present day. This is Dr. Kavita Singh. Thank you. Congratulations again on your prize, and thank you for joining us at The Wire.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.